It's about survival of all of us, and you can even say it's a survival of me and my family.
But I really gave up my entire life for it. I left the country, I left my job, I left my husband.
I was entirely in the technology field for 20 years until I saw Al Gore's presentation on TV.
Glaciers calving and melting ice, polar ice caps, and charts and graphs showing exponential increases in population.
And I was so shocked by what he was saying. I said, if this is true, then I'm wasting my time.
That was at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't sleep the whole night thinking about that.
But until I saw the movie, I never really realized what a huge crisis that is we are facing. It was just one of many, but I didn't realize the urgency.
The urgency stems from the fact that the ice caps are melting faster than anybody predicted.
So I decided to do my own studies and came to the conclusion that Al Gore was actually being a little optimistic, that things were actually worse than what he was saying.
And just the fact that we don't act quickly enough, that it doesn't matter what we do in 10 years maybe, depending when we reach the tipping point. Once we've reached them, we've lost the game in terms of climate change, and that just scares the heck out of me.
If we don't do anything, we will have an ice-free planet, just like we had a billion years ago.
Nothing has changed when you look at the increase in CO2 and the number of coal plants being built. Nothing has changed.
We can't continue to dump the amount of CO2 into the atmosphere that we've been putting in there in the last 100 years or a couple of decades at the rate we are. We will reach tipping points.
Life is disappearing. Extinction is happening at 1,000 times the background rate.
We stand to lose, by our negligence, half the species in the world over the next 100 years.
So we all have to care because we want to leave a better world for our children than what we inherited.
We only have one planet. There's nowhere else for us to go.
I would argue that almost every generation did not leave a better world for the next generation, because every generation essentially came up with tools or improved tools to exploit the environment.
That's the essence of the problem. It's the acceleration of consuming our natural resources on a very accelerated basis, whether it be oil and coal or copper or uranium.
And as these tools got more and more powerful and human numbers have increased, we have become capable of destroying the entire planet for our self-interest.
We're going to deplete pretty much everything in the next 50 to 100 years at the rate we're going.
Given the limitations of our finite planet, there can no longer be growth without responsibility.
The major cause of this problem is our overconsumption of the Earth's resources, clearly, because there is an estimate that we are consuming about 40% more of the Earth's resources than what is being regenerated every year on Earth.
You might say that population is a root cause as well. But if the population did not live the way we live in the Western world, maybe it wouldn't be a problem.
The root cause is the fact that the carbon industry has taken over our country, and that means that we can't make a move without either a liquid fuel or a solid fuel.
I think that the root cause of environmental problems or issues is the lack of education. And I don't want to blame one facet more so than another. I don't want to say, oh, it's corporations, or it's the government, or it's the consumer. I think it's a lack of education across that whole spectrum. And I think that when the education increases and we take responsibility for our actions, all three sects take responsibility for their actions, that's when we're going to see a turnaround.
Knowing what we know, we should have solar panels on every roof. We should all be using solar hot water. and we should have thin film solar wrapping every light pole.
Finance it through the renewable funding process, and there's no reason not to have solar thermal, hot water heating, solar photovoltaic, electrical generation, and insulation on every roof in every home.
So energy efficiency is usually a lot cheaper than installing solar. What I normally recommend is that people try to reduce their energy consumption first as much as they can, and then install solar to offset the remaining part.
We don't need to wait for the federal government to come in with legislation. It would be nice, but you know the leaders are not going to do what we want them to do. So let's start with our own community, and let's lead our leaders to lead. Let's show them by example. This is what we want them to do. We're going to take this first step. They can follow us.
This is more of a cultural and spiritual and behavioral issue than it is a technical issue. This is not a problem that can be solved with technology alone.
All this is behavioral changes. How do you create new habits? So how do you break the old habit, and how do you create new habits?
If the cause is overconsumption, the solution has to be to restrain the consumption. And it's unfortunately contrary to what we have been brought up to do culturally, because our culture is based on consumption.
One thing that's really important is to stay cheerful through this whole exercise. You know, you could let it get you down, but Martin Luther King did not say, "I have a nightmare." He said, "I have a dream." And so what is really important, and this I do every day in school with kids, is at the end of the day we create a dream of the future, and we see how far we've come along that dream, and how much better things are than they used to be, and how they're going to continue to get better.
So it requires for us to change what is it that we aspire to. Do we aspire to have huge houses and to eat exotic meals at every meal? Is that what brings us happiness? And if that answer is in the negative, we have a chance at surviving this process. And if that answer is always in the positive, I don't think we have a chance.